Hello, it's Bella Beloy, and welcome to the Seek Travel Ride. I'm the host of the show, and I'm bringing you a podcast which shares stories of people who take on incredible adventures all around the world on their bicycles. Whether you're dreaming of your first tour or planning your next big ride, this show is the one to listen to give you the inspiration for your own journeys. And today I want to say that I'm celebrating a big milestone because Seek Travel Ride has recently turned 2. That's right, over the past 2 years, I've had the chance to speak with people from all over the world. It's been an amazing journey to share their stories with you, and I want to say thank you to you, the listeners, for being a big part of that. Now, sharing an episode of the show with your friends or on your social media channels is one of the best ways to help me with the podcast out because it lets more people know about this awesome podcast and then expands our global community and reach even more. Thank you for tuning in and supporting the show, and now let's get into today's episode. Hello listeners, on today's episode I am thrilled to be welcoming back adventurer Claire Wyatt. Fans of the show will know that Claire has featured on Seek Travel Ride no less than 3 times already. 2 podcasts featuring her epic Australian bike tour where she had 14,000 kilometres pedalling up, down and all around Australia. And then I had her on discussing her tour through Southeast Asia, which was just before she started her next epic trip, taking her from Mongolia all the way back to the UK. Claire is halfway through that adventure now, and she's sharing one day of her trip from that latest adventure, and it is from the amazing country of Mongolia. Content warning, it's going to give you a huge hit of wanderlust. So without any further ado, let's listen to Claire talk about what it's like to spend one day riding in Mongolia.
This is a day on the road. This was a story from Mongolia. It was about day 10 on my Mongolia to London trip. And it's a day that I get asked about a lot and a day that I think about probably the most from my trip. It was one of the most insane, adventurous and wild days that I've ever had on the bike. So I definitely want to share a bit more about it. I was given this route in Mongolia by 2 Germans. I had actually met on the first day in my hostel. They had just finished their trip. And they told me about this incredible route that passed about 15 river crossings. And they said, look, you can give it a go if it hasn't rained the days before you get there. It did kind of rain 2 days before I got there, but I thought it wasn't enough to impact the rivers that much. So I decided to go for it. And the next day, there was torrential rain on the forecast. So I really just had this 24-hour window. So I thought I'm going to go for it. I got up about 5 a.m. and left the yurt that I was staying in. I opened the door and there was just this incredible sunrise. Everything was just glowing orange. And I just had this feeling it was going to be an epic day. So I made my way through the incredible grassland of Mongolia. It's just so open and wide. And for about the first hour, I only had one small river crossing. I thought, what's the fuss about? But I knew I had it to come. And kind of an hour in, I noticed behind me, I checked behind, I saw a silhouette of a dog. And I thought, oh, hello. You know, dogs, I think every cyclist has had run-ins with dogs, whether it's positive or negative. They can be aggressive. So I stopped the bike because I didn't know if he was chasing me, but he was very calm. And when I stopped, he sat down and was super friendly. And then I gave him a quick cuddle and said hello. And I thought he would wander back to wherever he'd come from. But really, since I'd left my yurt, that was the last town. So if he had followed me from there, it'd been an hour. Anyway, I kind of had a lot of my mind with the river crossings. And I just thought, look, if the dog wants to follow for a bit, fine. I thought he'll make his way home in a bit. And then I headed off for about another 10 kilometres before I got to the first section of deep river crossings. So I arrived, the dog was still with me, and the first river crossing looked pretty deep and it was a lot faster than I had imagined. And it was all just this kind of connecting estuary. So once you got past the first river, you still had kind of 4 more to get through. I took all my bags off and I laid my bike on the bank of the river, and then I went in first with just me in my shorts, and it was a warm, hot, sunny day, so it was quite refreshing going in. I was really excited for the first one. I was like, this is going to be a lot of fun. And it was much deeper than I thought. It got up to my hip. and it was fast and you had to keep your foot in, otherwise you'd get swept downstream. So anyway, the first one I went back, got 2 of my panniers, went over, success, came back, and the dog was with me every time I crossed. So he would come with me and I'd drop my bags, I'd wander back and he'd just follow me. He was just by my side the whole time, which really filled me with confidence, like doing that on my own. It was a bit stressful because I thought if I drop a bag, if I lose my footing and then I'm swept downstream. I knew I wasn't going to get hurt, but I really could have got in a pickle. So the dog just made me feel like, everything was okay. Every river, I would have 6 or 7 bags to take over, and it was my arms by the end of it. Honestly, they were burning. So I'd take 2 bags over, come back, grab 2 more, and the bike. And the bike was the hardest. I had to kind of try get it above my head, really, because I didn't want the chain or any parts to go underwater. Sometimes it just wasn't possible. It dipped into the water, and then I really felt the force of the water. So yeah, the first couple, my adrenaline was up, it was exciting, and then it just got exhausting, really, really exhausting, very hard to explain, but taking off the bags every time. There were some little ones that you could ride through, but most of them I had to take everything off. And each time I made, it was probably 6 times there and back, so 3 trips. I would just lie on the grass and be exhausted and try to get my breath back. And the lovely dog would be next to me and he'd come for a little cuddle, and then we'd go to the next one. Kind of on the 7th water crossing, I saw another dog run over. And I was like, where have you come from? Anyway, they got on really well and they played. So I was like, maybe he lives around here. He didn't, and the second dog left after a while, which it was just funny watching it all happen. And then I got to, about the 7th water crossing, and all these wild horses came for a dip in the river, and these are some of my favourite photos from the whole trip. And I just watched these. It was so majestic watching them come and bathe in the river. Yeah, it was one of my highlights of the trip. There were so many wild horses. And then a man came on his horse, and he didn't speak any English. I didn't speak any Mongolian, but big smiles. And he helped me on the next deep water crossing, and he took some of my bags. And it was just such a cool opportunity to meet a local, and he was laughing, and he did point at the dog, and I think he was thinking, whose dog is that? I obviously didn't know. So I carried on. The water crossings got less deep, but they got wider and wider. So actually it was getting, 600 metres across, quite strong currents, and still up to my knee. So I still had to be very careful, but I was just getting exhausted. And the dog was getting exhausted. He would get swept downstream sometimes, and I've got a video of him going all the way down. The current just took him, and then he'd get out and follow me again. And it carried on, and I finally got through to the 15th river crossing, and I knew, I was hoping that was the last one, and it was. And then about 3 o'clock, we stumbled across a yurt, some big dogs that were very aggressive towards the dog that was following me, which was quite stressful. And there were a lot of dogs throughout the day that did come and chase, and they would fight, and it was quite stressful. And I actually asked the family if they would take the dog, but they didn't want it. The daughter could speak some English and said, sorry, we already have 2 dogs. They didn't want a third. So I had my own little doggy for the whole day, and we left the family. They gave me some fermented goat's cheese, it tasted pretty not very nice. But the thought was there, and it was very kind of them. And then the rain started. So in Mongolia, the weather it's like a switch. It was a beautiful blue sky day in the morning, and then I just could feel this change, and I was just about to go into a plain, a really open plain, and I knew that if I started and it started to rain, it was going to be pretty scary, and the lightning out in Mongolia is very dangerous. So I decided to not start, and I went under some bushes in the trees, and I put up my tarp, and me and the dog sat for a while, waited for the rain to pass, and luckily it did, and some beautiful rainbows came out, and me and the dog carried on. I never named the dog, but he did bring some unwanted attention. The yaks did not take to him very well, and he was so cheeky. The yaks would come forward to me, and the dog would hide under my back wheel while I was riding, and then all the yaks would kind of, lunge at me because they were trying to get the dog. So I think he knew what he was doing. And then he just had such a character because he would be all scared of them and then suddenly he'd go and chase them all. So there was a lot of entertainment for me. Yeah, and he would go off and hunt and he would catch little squirrels. And yeah, I mean, we had done at least 80 kilometres that day. And I had one more really big climb to do to where I thought I might camp that night. And it was a gravel climb. He struggled up it and then I zoomed down the hill. And I kind of thought there was more signs of life around this area. So I thought maybe the dog would stop. And, I was thinking maybe the next day he'll go back to wherever he came from. He had no collar. I just had no idea whose dog he was. I didn't know what to do. Like, it really was in the middle of nowhere. I tried quite a few times during the day early on to kind of say, no, stop, go away. I never fed him because I didn't want him to think I was his owner now, because I had been told that they get very loyal and they think that you're the owner. Anyway, I rode down the hill and I thought, okay, maybe he's gone now. And then I found a spot to camp. The rain had come back and I put my tent up, and then in the distance I saw him running towards my tent. And my little heart, it was very sweet. And he slept next to my tent all night. I made him put the tarp up and made him a little area, and he was there when I woke up in the morning. This is just about a day in on the road, but I'm sure people wondered what happened. He stayed for another whole day, and another dog joined for the whole day. So I had 2 dogs, and I'd finally hit a bigger town and a road. So in the town, cars were beeping at them, and I just couldn't get them to stop following me. So I stopped and I asked a farmer for help, and he was very happy to take them. The first time he took them, he was holding their collars. And as I rode away, they were so strong, they broke free and chased after me. That was really sad. But the farmer helped get them back. And yeah, I have to think in my heart that they're safe there. A lot of people wanted me to bring him home. Yeah, it was just such an incredible experience to have a Mongolian dog with me for that long, and something I'll always remember.
Claire, this story is incredible. It's given me so much wanderlust, and there's so many elements to it as well. From just picturing those vast open wide landscapes of Mongolia, the energy-sapping river crossings. I remember vividly watching these play out on your Instagram stories. But talking about the whole process of having to unload your bike and do multiple trips over and back again with all of your bags and then with your bike, I can definitely feel the strain in my arms and legs just thinking about it. But of course, the heart of this story is the dog. Oh my gosh, it fills me with joy. And you are right. We've spoken about dogs on the show with many, many guests before, and it's always been about concern for the dogs and what to do if they're around and how to make sure they don't attack you. And what I loved about this story was he was just your companion for the day, wasn't he? He's just really chummy and wanted to be with you. The idea that he followed you that whole distance, oh my gosh, the dog must have been absolutely tuckered out. But yeah, I absolutely love it, and I am with you. You've just got to believe that dog has got a beautiful new home, is being well looked after, and who knows, maybe has also joined another bike traveller or two for a journey as well. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And listeners, I have provided links in the show notes to the previous episodes I have done with Claire, as well as links to her social media channel as well, so that you can keep following her journey across from Mongolia to the UK. She's about to restart that trip, setting off in Georgia in just a few weeks' time. Thank you, Claire. Okay, listeners, it's that time on these weekly episodes where I get to give an awesome shout out to you, my super fans, ultimate supporters of Seek Travel Ride and Dead Set Legends, who have continued to show your love and support for Seek Travel Ride by buying me some virtual coffees. I absolutely get thrilled to bits when I see these coffees roll through, and especially the messages attached to them. This week I have a shout out for Stephanie Caraway. She says, "From a long-time follower in Houston, Texas, you know I adore and appreciate you, Bella. Thank you for your inspiring podcast episodes, only made possible by your brilliant ability as an interviewer. Steph, #ride safe, have fun. P.S. I don't know if I'll make the bikepacking tour this summer, but you can be sure that I'll join you soon. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I know that you have been a long-time listener of Seek Travel Ride, and I truly value your support for the podcast. I'd love to know what sort of episodes that you love tuning into the most and how you're using the inspiration from my guest stories to fuel your own bike adventures. Sorry to hear you can't make my Pyrenees bikepacking trip this year, but my goodness, I hope that we get to ride bikes together in real life, maybe next year, right? Thank you for supporting the show. And then I have Kath Barron, who says, inspiring stories. Short and sweet there, Kath, but you are right. I agree with you. My guest stories are exactly that. They are inspirational, and I share them with a passion here on Seek Travel Ride so that people like you listen to them and draw all this inspiration up from their stories and get a dose of wanderlust as well to take on your own bike adventures too. Thank you so much, Kath, for supporting the show. Well, listeners, if you would like to do as Stephanie and Kath have done and show your love for Seek Travel Ride, you can also buy me some coffees, some virtual brews to keep me caffeinated and producing these episodes for you. I've provided a link in the show notes. Hit the link, buy me a coffee, and most importantly, tell me what you love listening to on the podcast. And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening. Hey there, adventurers! Are you loving the stories on Seek Travel Ride? If so, you can help the podcast wheels turning, literally. Head to the link in the show notes and buy me a coffee. Every coffee fuels this podcast, supports incredible guest stories, and keeps the adventure alive. So go ahead, click the link in the show notes, grab me a virtual brew, and let's ride on together.